Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive into something I think most of you are probably pretty familiar with, Spotify.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about playlists or discovering new music. We're
Okay.
going deeper into the business side of it all.
Yeah.
The inner workings, the economics.
Absolutely.
And we've got a couple of really fascinating articles that shine a light on
Okay.
the tension brewing between Spotify and the artists.
Interesting.
Basically, Spotify's making some big moves trying to grow their business,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm.
some folks are arguing it's happening at the expense of the musicians,
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
the people who actually make the music that we all love.
For sure.
So one of the big things Spotify's doing is they're pushing into audiobooks now.
Oh, wow. Audiobook's interesting.
Yeah. And on the surface, it's like, okay, that makes sense. But it raises this question of
Mhm.
how is this going to impact how musicians get paid?
Right.
Right.
Because that's a whole other
Exactly.
revenue stream, and how do they balance those
Right.
two decks?
And that's what's so fascinating about this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's this classic clash between a company's desire for growth
Right.
and then the need to make sure the creators
Yeah, artists. Yeah.
are being compensated fairly
Yeah.
for the content they're creating.
Absolutely.
So, okay, Spotify adds audiobooks to their platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they decide to raise the price of the premium subscriptions.
Okay.
So at first glance, you're like,
Yeah. Seems logical.
yeah, more stuff, higher price, makes sense.
Right.
But then the thing that caught a lot of people's attention is that
Yeah.
it doesn't look like this extra money from the price hike
Mm-hmm.
is actually trickling down to the artists.
Oh, wow. Really? So where is it going?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's even more concerning is this idea Spotify has floated of a bundle rate
A bundle rate. What's that?
for royalties.
Okay.
So basically, one subscription fee would cover both the music and the audiobooks.
Okay.
But how that revenue would actually be split
Yeah, between musicians and authors.
between authors and musicians,
Right.
that's still a huge unknown.
Yeah. Big question mark there.
So it's almost like Spotify gets bigger,
Mm-hmm.
subscribers pay more, but the artist might actually end up
With less.
with a smaller piece of the pie.
Oh, wow. That doesn't seem right.
No. And
Well,
you can imagine that's created some
Backlash.
serious pushback.
Yeah, for sure.
And one of the most vocal critics has been Dee Snider.
Oh, Dee Snider from Twisted Sister.
Yeah, he had some pretty strong words
I bet he did.
for Spotify CEO Daniel Ek
Okay.
in a recent interview, and he basically accused Spotify of treating music
Like what?
like some kind of factory-produced commodity,
Oh, wow.
saying something like, want more money, just turn out more songs.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's like, whoa, that's
Oh.
harsh. It's harsh, but,
Yeah.
I kind of get where he's coming from.
Right.
Because his whole point is that making music,
Yeah.
it's not about just pressing a button
Yeah.
and churning out a product,
Yeah.
There's so much talent time,
Passion.
passion that goes into it.
Blood, sweat, and tears, as they say.
It's art, not just another can of soda,
Yeah, he makes a good point.
But Snyder's not the only one who feels this way.
Right. I bet there's a lot of artists
Yeah.
who feel similarly.
Absolutely. His comments might have been
Yeah, a little colorful.
a little colorful, but they reflect a sentiment that's pretty widespread across the music industry.
Yeah. I mean,
Artists are feeling increasingly devalued in the streaming era.
right. And this isn't a new concern, is it?
This has been brewing for a while.
Yeah. Remember those Justice at Spotify protests
Oh, yeah, those were,
last year? Those were a pretty big deal.
yeah, what were they all about again?
It was a bunch of independent musicians, and they were protesting what they saw as like this unfair system
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't giving them a fair share of the profits.
Gotcha, so they were demanding,
They had a bunch of demands.
like what?
Well, they wanted higher royalty rates for one,
Okay, makes sense.
more transparency in how those rates were calculated, and just greater control for artists over how their music's presented on the platform.
So like,
Yeah, like the algorithm and stuff.
okay, interesting. And the timing of those protests was really interesting too,
Yeah, why is that?
because it was right after
Oh, right after the
a
pandemic.
whole year where musicians couldn't tour,
Yeah,
couldn't perform live because
didn't
of
make any money.
COVID.
Right.
So it really highlighted how vulnerable they are when they have to rely so much on
Streaming income?
streaming for their income.
Right.
And, one thing that really struck me was
Mm-hmm.
this point that Julie Holter made.
Oh, yeah, the musician.
Yeah, she said, this fight's not just about
The big name.
the superstars.
Yeah. Yeah.
It affects anyone and everyone who makes music.
Right. Even those who aren't like
Yeah.
actively focused on Spotify.
Exactly.
Like a ripple effect.
It is. And that's what's so important to remember This isn't just a niche issue. This is something that could really reshape the entire
Like a music industry.
music industry.
Wow.
So if we take a step back, look at the big picture here.
Yeah, let's do that.
Spotify, they're
Oh.
trying to grow. They're trying to evolve as a company,
Right, as any company does.
which is totally understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, you've got these artists who are
Yeah.
feeling increasingly squeezed and undervalued.
Right. That's a tough situation.
It is. So where do we go from here? Is there a way to balance these competing interests?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question.
It is.
How can these streaming platforms achieve profitability
Right.
while also ensuring fair compensation for the creators that they rely on?
And it's not just about Spotify either.
Right, this is much bigger.
It's a fundamental question about how we value art and creativity in this digital age.
Yeah, in a world where everything's
Yeah.
so easily accessible.
Exactly. How do we,
Put a price tag on.
how do we value that?
Creativity is a tough one.
It is. So I'm curious, what do you think?
About what?
Do you think artists have any real power
To change things?
to force Spotify's hand?
It's a good question.
Or does Spotify hold all the cards?
Well, I think Spotify definitely has a lot of power. No doubt about that. But
Yeah.
I don't think we should underestimate the power of collective action.
Oh,
You know, we've already seen artists coming together to
Yes.
make their voices heard.
yeah.
And I think as the industry continues to evolve, their ability to organize and advocate for their interests,
Yeah.
that's going to be crucial.
That's a good point.
It's going to be really
Yeah.
interesting to see how this all plays out.
It is. This whole situation really makes you think.
It does.
As listeners, we benefit so much from these platforms.
Oh, yeah, the convenience, the accessibility, it's amazing.
It's incredible, but we also have a responsibility
Yeah,
to think about the impact our choices are having
on the artist.
on the creators.
Yeah.
If you're a musician and you're relying on streaming as your main source of income,
Mm-hmm.
but the system isn't set up to fairly compensate you,
Mm-hmm.
what are your options?
Right. Where do you go from there?
What does a fair and sustainable music ecosystem
Yeah.
even look like
What does that future look like?
in the age of streaming?
It's a big question.
It is, and it's one that we all need to be thinking about.
Absolutely.
So we want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
What are your takeaways from all of this?
Hit us up on social media.
Leave a comment. Let's keep this conversation going.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep listening. Keep thinking critically. And most importantly, keep supporting the artists you love.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.